There's an answer from Bomani Jones that always gets me because it's succinct, funny, and accurate. The question, what causes racism? The answer, white people. After the 2020 census, Louisiana and Alabama drew their new congressional maps that had one congressional district with a majority of African American voters. Those districts were compliant with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that African Americans had a say in who represented them in the House. And yes, those districts were safe seats for Democrats. Both of those maps were challenged, and this Supreme Court, actually ruled that both maps were still disenfranchising African American voters and ordered both states to draw their maps again with a second majority-minority district. Both Louisiana and Alabama redrew their maps for the 2024 elections, resulting in a gain of one Democrat from each state going to the House of Representatives. However, several voters in Louisiana decided to sue, saying that the redrawn map discriminated against white people. Even though the Supreme Court had already decided that the first map had discriminated against black people, they were now willing to hear an argument that the second map discriminated against white people on the grounds that racial gerrymandering is prohibited by the Constitution. On April 29th, the Sinister Six on the Supreme Court not only struck down the congressional map of Louisiana, they also removed voting protections for racial minorities under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court's yearly term ends sometime in June. They could have easily withheld this ruling until then. They also could have applied the Purcell principle in their ruling. This is a standard that the Supreme Court uses when a decision is too close to an election date. In other words, if the Purcell principle was properly applied, then this court's decision would not have any effect on the 2026 elections, but would therefore be applied to the 2028 elections. But because the Supreme Court purposefully released this decision in April and is refusing to apply the Purcell principle, we are now seeing states, especially Louisiana, racing at full speed to redraw their maps, even as voters have already started receiving and casting their ballots. Louisiana's primary is on May 19th. Ballots have already been sent out and in some cases returned. But Republican Governor Jeff Landry has issued an executive order stopping the elections. He's trying to force a new map for congressional districts after filing deadlines have passed and after people have already started voting. And by the way, Louisiana also has a Senate election in these primaries, but Landry's allowing voting for the Senate to continue because it's a statewide election. How is this supposed to work? They're going to count the already printed ballots for the Senate race, but not the House races? Is the state of Louisiana really going to spend millions of dollars to print new ballots? This is what the Republicans are now. They are fascists who will steal and rig elections. Even if some states don't redraw their maps by 2026, they are definitely redrawing them for 2028. Keep in mind, all of these districts are where African American voters are in the majority. The one district in South Carolina, gone. The one district in Mississippi, gone. The one district in Tennessee centered around their largest city, Memphis, gone. The one district in Missouri centered around their largest city, St. Louis, gone. The district in Southwest Georgia, gone. And while I guarantee that Republicans in Alabama and Louisiana will eliminate at least one of their majority African American districts, it would not shock me in the least if they do whatever it takes to completely disenfranchise black voters and have 0 districts. Republicans in the South are not even pretending about what they're doing. They are purposefully using their power and permission from the Supreme Court to erase black people from American democracy. This decision by the Supreme Court is trying and failing to use the 15th Amendment of the Constitution as cover. The purpose of the 15th Amendment was created to make sure that no one was prevented from being part of American democracy because of their race, especially Black people in the South who were now freed slaves and granted American citizenship. That's why Section 2 of the 15th Amendment is just as important as the first. It gives Congress the power to make sure the 15th Amendment is strengthened and followed. That's the entire fucking point of the Voting Rights Act. The South lost the Civil War, and they refused to accept that they were the bad guys. So for nearly 100 years, white people in many parts of the South refused to obey the 15th Amendment. To prevent Black people from voting, they imposed poll taxes, they forced literacy tests, and in some cases resorted to intimidation and physical violence. And yes, they also used gerrymandering as a way to prevent Black people from being elected to any public office, state or federal. And because of people like Dr. Martin Luther King and John Lewis, and so many men and women who gave their lives for freedom, equality, and dignity, the Democrats, led by the greatest political leader to ever come from my home state of Texas, Lyndon Baines Johnson, signed into law the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And after President Johnson signed, he is reported to have said, "We have lost the South for a generation." While President Johnson was right, I don't think he ever would have foreseen a day where the Voting Rights Act was completely destroyed by the Supreme Court. Nor do I think he could have foreseen that the leader of the Republican racist movement would come from a guy from Buffalo, New York, Chief Justice John Roberts. Roberts has been working for 40 years to dismantle the Voting Rights Act, starting at his time as a lawyer in the Reagan administration. He wrote the majority opinion in Shelby County v. Holder, a decision that gutted Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Now, Roberts' racist quest is complete, and I feel it appropriate to echo what civil rights author Elie Mystal has said. John Roberts is a white supremacist. Throughout the campaign, whenever I'm asked what issues Democrats should focus on, or what's one of the first pieces of legislation I would champion, I remind voters that Democrats can't create policy if we are out of power, and Republicans will do whatever it takes to steal power. That is why when I answer this question, I talk about expanding the House and new gerrymandering laws by warning voters that the Voting Rights Act is going to fall, and that Democrats need to be ready and have a plan for when it does. Well, it happened, just as I said it would, and I'm the only candidate in this race that has a plan. Just like with Citizens United, passing a new voting rights law won't amount to anything as long as the Supreme Court is stacked with fascists and racists who will use this blatantly unconstitutional ruling as precedent. Democrats have to do whatever it takes in 2026 and especially 2028 to start over with a new expanded court. Once that is done, then we can pass a new and improved Voting Rights Act, a law that restores voting power to minorities and prevents obvious racism in denying representation. Getting rid of this Supreme Court is the only way we will be able to protect American citizens who don't look like me. Keep your eyes open.